service providers say, oh yes, we help trans people, we support trans people, but in reality, they're not safe spaces for us. Trans women who are not as passing as other women because of the stereotype that we place on the image of what a trans person ought to look like, or what a woman or a man, or, and we have all these stereotypes, so our community is at risk of harm. And a lot of times there's a lot of violence reported, and the authorities, the agencies, service providers are not accountable for that. They don't want to do anything about it. So there's a need, there's an enormous need. And so I know that the city is going to be announcing this transition SRO housing project that they're building with 20 beds, and it's great. But let's not wait another 10, 20 years for another 20 beds. There's not a lot of housing available in the city. We know that Vancouver City has become unaffordable for mainstream people. When you have $3,000 that you can pay for a month of rent, but you have 5 children to house and you can't find housing, like $3,000, that's a lot of money. I am sorry, and you still can't find housing. So imagine if you're on social assistance, or if you work at a job that's like $10 an hour, right? You really can't find housing. Then you go and you add the social discrimination, the isms that exist, right? I look like a guy, I show up in makeup, I don't have a lot of references, and they're not really great references, and I want to find a home. If you don't have a home or access to funding from the ministry, if you don't have a home, how do you organize yourself? How do you organize appointments to the doctor? How do you organize yourself to show that you're stable to meet the criteria to even go through sex reassignment surgeries, right? And all these different things. In 1987, the 2nd of May 1987, I moved to Vancouver. And I was a sex worker and a drug user back then. And in 1989, I changed my life around by the grace of God. In that time period, the only model that existed was harm reduction model. And so I went through all these programs and services and cleaned myself up, and I couldn't find a job. I had no life skills, so I went back to college and I became a psychiatric nurse. They didn't want to give me a full-time job back then. Transgendered people, and back then we were called trannies, by the way, very derogatory word, but that's what we were called. Couldn't find a job. So with my skills, I met up with some friends, and there was already a once-a-week meal program for trans people out of WISH, which was at First United back then, as part of First United. And I said, we need more than just a meal a night. So I pushed and moved and begged and knocked on doors, and we got space, which was the boiler room of Vancouver Native Health. And we were happy like a kite. We went and knocked on the doors of the San Franciscan Sisters, where they do the soup line every day, and they would give us food to help serve our trans women, because they saw it as an important thing, so that they weren't in line being harassed, being assaulted, all these different things. So we were happy we had our space. My friend Deborah invited the lawyers from the BC Law Society, and we got a grant to write the history of trans people and the human rights violations that were constantly happening upon us, from accessing washrooms to accessing homes, everything. So we published that human rights report, and we got a grant from the provincial government to operate a full-time drop-in. We called it the High Risk Project Society in the 90s, and it operated for 5 years. It got funding for 5 years. And that's in that period of time, I got a job out of it, and it really gave me a lot of strength and a lot of skills to talk, to argument, to present. And for me, it was all about, I could always be back there. It's only one step, one paycheck, one bad event in your life, and you could be there. You don't know where you're going to find yourself tomorrow.